All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first round of virtual meetings for the Connecticut 2055 Long Range Transportation Plan. I'm Patrick Zapatka of the Connecticut Department of Transportation and the project manager for the Connecticut 2055 Long Range Transportation Plan. I'm pleased to be joined today by our Connecticut 2055 Plan team with the CTDOT and our prime consultant, CDM Smith. In addition to myself, Krista Gooden, the client project manager, Carolyn Ciani, and Amy Livingston will be presenting today. But before we get started, I'm going to hand it over to Amy to go through a few of the Zoom features we'll be using today to make sure you are able to get the most out of this meeting.
Thanks, Patrick, and good evening. Thank you all for joining us. If you, at any point in the meeting, you experience unreliable internet, you may call into the meeting by dialing the number listed on the screen. If you have any technical issues throughout the meeting, please email us at dot.longrangeplan@ct.gov. Live captioning and subtitles are available during this meeting. Click the Show Captions button to view, and then you can choose the language of the captions. Following the presentation, we'll move into a question and answer session. However, please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation so you don't forget them, but we'll make sure to answer them at the end. To submit a question, select the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom webinar window to open the Q&A feature. From there, please type the question in the text box and click Enter. We'll also accept questions verbally after we've taken all the written questions. And don't worry, we'll go back through these instructions again before we move into the question and answer session. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this plan. A recording of this presentation will be posted to the plan's webpage as well as our DOT's YouTube channel very soon. Spanish captions will also be available on both of those after the recording is uploaded. This notice contains further information about your Title VI rights during the public involvement process. Any person who believes they have been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint. The contact information to do so is listed in this notice. This information is also available on the screen in Spanish. For immediate inquiries, please reach out to our Connecticut DOT Office of Communications at the email shown on the screen. And now, to get us started, we'll have a brief message from our commissioner.
Hello, I'm Garrett Euclideo, Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Thank you for joining us to learn more about the Connecticut 2055 Long Range Transportation Plan. Our last long range plan was published in 2018, and so much has changed since then. As we outline a vision for the future of transportation in our state, we need to hear from you on what you want to see. Connecticut's growing, and how the people here work, live, and play is evolving. People's needs are changing, and with that, so are how people utilize our state's vast transportation network. Whether someone drives, rides the bus, takes the train, walks, or bikes, we have to ensure it is safe and convenient. ConnDOT will continue to prioritize safety, drive economic growth, increase mobility, connect communities, and enhance lives through a forward-thinking, multimodal transportation system. Connecticut 2055 will be a visionary plan for all transportation users in our state, and we can't do this alone, and that's why your feedback is so important. We look forward to your input to ensure this plan reflects your vision for Connecticut's future.
Thank you, Commissioner. The purpose of today's meeting is to gather your valuable insights and feedback regarding the future of transportation in Connecticut. As daily users of our transportation system, we want to hear your thoughts and ideas as they are crucial for shaping our plans. During this meeting or afterwards, please take a moment to scan the QR code provided on this slide to submit your feedback easily. Don't worry, we'll be sharing this several times tonight and dropping a link into the chat. This is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts, ideas, and expectations for transportation in our state. Tonight, we'll start with an overview of what Connecticut 2055 entails. Following that, we'll delve into the draft vision and goals, which are crucial for guiding our initiatives. We'll also examine current and emerging transportation trends that could impact our strategies moving forward. Finally, we'll discuss ways for you to provide your input and briefly review the next steps to shape Connecticut 2055. We will conclude with a question and answer session. So, what is Connecticut 2055? And who are we planning for? Connecticut 2055 highlights our commitment to future-oriented transportation planning. This image symbolizes the next generation, emphasizing the importance of sustainable and efficient transportation solutions for their future. Connecticut 2055 reflects our long-term vision, aiming to create a robust transportation strategy that meets the needs of our communities. This is not just about transportation infrastructure. It's about ensuring a safe, livable, accessible environment for future generations. A long-range transportation plan serves as a crucial policy framework that is typically revisited every 3 to 5 years. It is designed to guide investments in the multimodal transportation system, ensuring that all modes of transportation are considered and integrated. Key components include public engagement, which emphasizes the importance of community input in shaping transportation priorities. Additionally, assessing the current state of our transportation system and its needs for all users helps us understand the service gaps. Evaluating emerging trends helps anticipate future demands and challenges while reviewing fiscal capacity to ensure that funding is aligned with future investments. Updating the long-range transportation plan is crucial as Connecticut continues to evolve. We must recognize that the state is facing increasing transportation demands, which necessitates a proactive approach to planning. Additionally, we are witnessing shifts in travel behaviors and the introduction of new modes and technologies that can affect how people get around. It's also important to consider how financial conditions may change. We need to ensure that we can maintain and improve our transportation system effectively well into the future. By addressing these factors, we can create a more efficient and responsive transportation system that meets the needs of those children I showed just a few moments ago. The Connecticut 2055 Long-Range Transportation Plan will focus on creating a comprehensive vision for Connecticut's transportation future. It will serve all residents by ensuring that transportation systems are accessible and efficient. It will balance the needs of various modes of transportation, which is critical for fostering a well-connected state. Enhancing people's mobility, meaning making it easier for people to get to and from where they need and want to go, and quality of life are at the forefront, as improved transportation can lead to better economic opportunities and community connection. Additionally, the plan will emphasize the importance of embracing technological innovations to enhance safety and operational efficiency. So how does Connecticut 2055 fit in with our other transportation plans and initiatives? Connecticut 2055 serves as that foundation that guides all of our transportation decision-making. For example, the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which is a multimodal plan that lists our funded projects, and the statewide freight plan that focuses on moving goods into and out of the state safely and efficiently. Each of these plans play a critical role in enhancing transportation infrastructure and safety. For instance, the Strategic Highway Safety Plan focuses on how to reduce accidents, and the Regional Council of Governments plans address those regional transportation needs. By setting the foundation for these various plans, Connecticut 2055 not only supports those current initiatives, but also creates a comprehensive approach to address those future transportation needs. So the vision and goals for a long-range transportation plan serve as the guiding framework for how to invest in the state transportation system over an extended period of time. And the vision outlines the overarching aspirations and desired outcomes for the transportation system. It sets the long-term direction and provides a clear picture of what the transportation network should be. So what goes into the Connecticut 2055 vision? First, Connecticut DOT's mission, improving lives through transportation, defines our core purpose. While the previous plan's vision provides valuable insights and lessons learned, ensuring we're building on past experiences. And this is not just a Connecticut DOT plan. Our partner agency visions highlight the collaborative efforts with stakeholders, emphasizing the importance of those shared goals. In addition, we want to incorporate your input and feedback to refine this overarching vision for 2055. So please make sure you have an opportunity to complete our survey. The Connecticut 2055 draft vision outlines an ambitious goal for the future of transportation in our state. Building on Connecticut DOT's mission, our draft vision is: we envision a safe and accessible transportation system that connects and enhances our communities. We strive for reliable and resilient multimodal transportation options for everyone. Our mission is to improve lives through transportation. Next, we drafted the draft goals to break down the vision into specific actionable objectives that guide the planning and decision-making process. The previous plan reflects our past strategies and lessons learned, while Trends emphasizes the importance of staying ahead of market dynamics, population changes, and travel behavior. All transportation modes embodies our commitment to a multimodal approach, ensuring the future investments and improvements will facilitate the movement of people and goods across various modes, including bus, rail, trains, bicycling, and pedestrian facilities. And finally, future engagement points to the need for proactive interaction with you, our stakeholders and communities. Together, these elements help form the draft goals for Connecticut 2055. Here are the draft goals. Safety for all users highlights the commitment to reducing serious injuries and fatalities and fostering a sense of security among users. Connected communities and equitable access underscore the importance of inclusivity, ensuring that everyone has access to reliable transportation options to get them to where they need to go. The goals also stress the need for resilient and sustainable infrastructure and an innovative future, which will leverage emerging technologies to enhance the transportation experience. Ultimately, these initiatives are designed to support a vibrant economy by facilitating the seamless movement of people and goods, thereby creating opportunities for growth and prosperity across Connecticut. With all of this in mind, do you have any ideas of what you want our shared future to look like? Feel free to scan the QR code on the screen to take our survey now. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Ciani to walk us through current and emerging trends in Connecticut.
Thanks, Krista. Okay, so next we're going to cover some of the trends we're seeing in Connecticut and talk about current and future transportation needs as we look ahead to 2055. Now, let's take a glance at Connecticut's transportation network. There are some key data points and trends that require Connecticut to respond in how we plan our transportation network. To start, nearly 156,000 residents work out of state, with many working in our neighboring states of New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. The average commute time for a Connecticut resident is 25 minutes, with many commuting to economic centers like Hartford, New Haven, and Stamford. Personal vehicles are also the dominant mode of transportation for commuting. Nearly 6% of the population in Connecticut lives in rural areas, which are scattered throughout the state and make up a large portion of the northwestern and northeastern areas of the state. Connecticut DOT maintains 3,715 miles of highways and interstates, over 4,000 bridges, and 243 track miles of rail. There are over 50 railroad stations in Connecticut providing commuter and passenger rail service via the New Haven line and its 3 branch lines servicing New Canaan, Danbury, and Waterbury, Shoreline East, the Hartford line, and Amtrak. Bus services in the state are also extensive, with CT Transit offering 113 local and express bus routes. There are also 289 miles of bike trails to provide active transportation connectivity. There are 20 airports for use by the public, with the largest ones being Bradley International Airport and Tweed New Haven Airport. All of these characteristics play an important role in the state's robust and interconnected transportation network. So looking ahead to 2055, we anticipate that the state will continue to grow in both our population and our employment. This growth will likely require changes to our transportation network and emphasize the importance of planning long-term transportation investments now to meet demands and transportation needs in the future. Now that we've discussed some of the trends we're seeing in Connecticut, let's see them in action through the stories of 3 Connecticut residents. We're going to meet Connie first. She's a recent retiree. She lives in Waterbury with her husky, Jonathan. While she has an active social circle, she started worrying about driving places after dark for her own safety. She can easily navigate the well-maintained roads in Waterbury to get groceries and go to the doctor's office, but when it comes to visiting her grandchildren in Danbury, she wishes there were another alternative like Dial-A-Ride or even a self-driving car. That would be nice. She always has to leave early when visiting so she can get home before dark. Her daughter has promised to show her how to use a rideshare app, but that can get expensive pretty fast. She hopes to stay independent as long as she can so she can watch her grandchildren start their own families in Connecticut. Connie's transportation needs center around the ability to maintain her independence and social life through safe transportation choices, including keeping the roads well-maintained, safe, and free of heavy traffic congestion, safe options to get from one city to the next in Connecticut, such as rideshares or future tech, and safe designated places for rideshare pickup and drop-off. Transportation can improve Connie's life by supporting safety for all users, connected communities, equitable access, and innovative future. Did you know, while Connecticut's overall population has remained stable, the percentage of those over 65 years old has increased by almost 23% in the last 10 years. This age group will continue to grow through 2055, and the percentage of people over 80 years old will see the fastest growth over this time. A key indicator Connecticut DOT uses to measure the health of roadways is pavement condition. Connecticut exceeded their most recent goals on pavement conditions for both interstate and non-interstate highways. Almost 3/4 of interstate pavement was in good condition and only 0.1% was in poor condition. For non-interstate highways, almost 40% of pavement was in good condition and less than 3% was in poor condition. Since 2012, traffic fatalities in Connecticut have risen, similar to the rest of the country where they've risen by nearly 27%. To make Connecticut's roads safer, it's important to understand the unique factors at play, like road and environmental conditions and driver behavior. So on to our second Connecticut resident, Connor. He is excited to be starting a family. While he's been working in insurance for a couple of years in downtown Hartford, his new wife is a teacher in Southington. Like a lot of Connecticut residents, he's now able to work from home a few days a week. However, they need to find somewhere affordable to live while keeping his commute to work reasonable now that they're starting the family they've always wanted. He also knows that getting to and from daycare on time will be important to them in the coming years, as well as bike lanes that are safe for kids and sidewalks to school. He's heard from coworkers that a lot of them use CT Transit to get into the office and also have really loved using the new CT Rail Hartford line to meet with clients in Meriden, Wallingford, and New Haven. He loves that while he's downtown, he can walk to grab a last-minute gift for his wife at one of the many shops or use a rideshare e-scooter to meet up with an old friend for lunch. A lot of time, he takes a walk along the riverfront at lunch. Connor's transportation needs include affordable housing with a reliable, reasonable commute aided by transit, family-friendly, safe bicycle lanes and sidewalks, and a vibrant downtown to walk, shop, or grab lunch safely. Transportation can improve his family's lives by supporting safety for all users, connected communities, vibrant economy, and equitable access. Our second, did you know? The number of Connecticut residents who work from home increased 175% from 2019 to 2023, with approximately 260,000 people who work from home. From 2000 to 2019, the number of miles traveled by all motorized vehicles, meaning cars, trucks, motorcycles, etc., grew by nearly 4%. During the COVID-19 pandemic, those numbers decreased dramatically. Since then, the number of miles driven on Connecticut's roads and highways has continually risen and is expected to surpass pre-COVID levels by 2028. Interstates and expressways contributed to nearly half of all miles that were traveled across Connecticut. Residents of Connecticut are experiencing higher costs and a more limited supply of housing. In the last 5 years, median list prices were up over a third, and the price per square foot increased over 50%. Over the same time, the inventory of available housing went down almost 80%. Understanding the housing needs of residents is fundamental to prioritizing where and what transportation improvements are needed. All right, on to our third Connecticut resident, Conrad. Conrad lives in Trumbull with his wife and 2 children and works as a manager at a retail store in downtown New Haven. His family does not have any vehicles and relies on the bus, train, walking, and biking to get to work, buy groceries, and access healthcare. Within the first few weeks of his new job, he's realized he needs a better way to get to work on time so he can be there for his employees. He's been taking the bus to Bridgeport Station and catching the train to New Haven. However, the bus routes to Bridgeport Station are primarily during the week. He often works weekend shifts, late nights, and early mornings to receive incoming shipments and finds himself utilizing ride shares, which adds up in cost. Conrad also has some physical health concerns and finds it challenging, particularly in inclement weather, to navigate icy or snowy sidewalks, especially at night. Sometimes he resorts to walking in the street, but feels unsafe. Conrad hopes to find a safer and more reliable way to ensure he arrives at work on time. Conrad's transportation needs include seamless connectivity between bus and train accommodations and efficient bus and rail routes so he can get to work and other appointments on time, expanded bus and rail routes to support early morning, late night, and weekend travel, and safe, well-maintained sidewalks and bus stops, particularly during the winter months. Conrad thinks transportation can improve his family's lives by supporting safety for all users, connected communities, resilient and sustainable infrastructure, and equitable access. Did you know 3 cities in Connecticut rank among the highest in the nation for the percentage of households without cars? Hartford at 29%, New Haven at 26%, and Bridgeport at 19%. While CT Transit bus ridership did decline during the COVID-19 pandemic by 35%, ridership has been recovering, and a full recovery is expected by 2027. Here in Connecticut, we have a vast passenger rail network. Almost 30 million trips were taken on commuter rails throughout Connecticut in 2023. Okay, now we've heard the stories of 3 Connecticut residents, but what about you? How can transportation improve your life? We'd love to hear your ideas, concerns, and stories to help us create a transportation system that benefits everyone in Connecticut.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you can do that, how you can engage with our team and have your voice heard. There are several ways for you to provide input. First, you can visit the plan's website at the link shown on the screen or by scanning the QR code. We'll drop that link in the chat again for you here. There you can learn more information, take our survey, or view these meeting materials. You can also send comments via email to dot.longrangeplan@ct.gov or mail them to the address listed on the screen. Whether you have specific concerns or just general comments on the Connecticut 2055 Long Range Transportation Plan, we'd love to hear from you. During this initial comment period, please share your feedback by May 23rd. So if you happen to click on that link in the chat or scan the QR code, this is what you'll see on the survey. There are just a few questions to assess your transportation experiences and your concerns. To learn more about the plan, you can click the Overview tab. You can also read the draft goals that Krista went over earlier in the 3rd Plan Goals tab. On that note, we've been hitting the road to meet people at events and train stations across the state. Thank you to those who have met with us at the Waterbury YMCA and several transportation centers. To visit us at our upcoming listening sessions throughout the state, including train stations in Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and Stamford, and at events like the Groton Public Library Earth Day Expo this weekend, scan the QR code on the screen to visit our webpage for more of the details. We've got days, times, locations. But before we wrap up, let's take a look at where we are in the process of developing Connecticut 2055. Last fall, we dove into the data to truly understand the current state of transportation in Connecticut. This helped us form the draft vision and goals to bring that to you now for your feedback. Using the data collected and your input on the priorities for Connecticut's transportation system, including those vision and goals, we'll begin better defining the needs of our transportation system across its various modes, whether you drive, ride a bike, ride a car, or walk. From there, we'll develop strategies and recommendations on how best to invest in your transportation future. After this has been pulled together, the plan will be developed and it'll be brought back to you all, the public, again before it's adopted next summer. So with that, I'm sure that we have a number of questions and thoughts, and we'll transition into our question and answer session. Just a friendly reminder, let's have a productive, friendly, and efficient meeting. Please remember to use respectful language and maintain professional meeting behavior. While we encourage you to submit questions through the Q&A feature, if you're unable to do so, we would ask that you do this verbally, and a facilitator would unmute you to do so. Simply raise your hand. We'll be moving through the submitted questions first, and for the sake of time, we may group similar questions together to ensure that we cover all the topics this evening. As a reminder, a recording of this meeting will be available on the plan's website over the next week. A couple of other reminders: if you're new to Zoom, or maybe you need a refresher, you can submit a question through the Q&A tool. If you would like to ask your question verbally, we'll have you raise your hand after we've taken all of the questions that are written. And should you have any technical issues during this session, don't worry. We've mentioned several times ways to have your voice heard. Just simply email us and let us know. So with that, I'm going to shift over and look to see the questions that we have received thus far. Apologize. All right, the first question I see here is one related to the overall plan and the time frame. So Patrick, I want to invite you back up as the project manager so you can help answer a couple of these questions. All right, the first question is, what time frame does the plan cover? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so, excuse me. So the long range plan typically is a 20 to 30-year plan. So the Connecticut 2055 plan will cover a period from 2024 through 2055, which is 31 years.
Wonderful. Thanks. Appreciate that. All right. The next one that we received, and I think this one we received in relation to when we were talking through some of the stories of hypothetical Connecticut residents. This one is more of a discussion of, it's a safe designated place for rideshare and pickup and drop off. They point out really astutely that this is also the description of a great bus stop. And their comment is related to having better, safer, more frequent bus service. So I think that's a really great notice or trigger for us all here to think about if there are gaps in bus service. Where do you see them? That was a really great type of comment that we'd love to get. So if you do have pulled up that survey or you have your email, make sure that you're sharing that with us as well. That's exactly would be wonderful for us to understand, because as we mentioned, our goal is for this plan to really speak from a policy related standpoint on how we can increase our transportation access seamlessly across modes and make sure that there is access for all. Let's see. Scrolling over here to the next question. Patrick, they're interested in learning more about when they would be able to see the actual final plan. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so right now we do not have a final plan drafted. We're looking to get that drafted, I'd say, in fiscal year 2026 by the end of that. But right now, what we do have that's available is our vision and goals. I think what's important is to hear your comments and thoughts on our vision and goals first before we go ahead and start developing that plan. This is just an initial round for public involvement. We plan to hold another round of involvement as we start to develop this plan into the future.
Wonderful. So the next question that I see here is related to bicycles and bike paths. So the question is, what role might bicycles and bike paths play in the long-term plan, and how do e-bikes fit into this as an emerging technology?
Yeah, such a great comment. I'm just going to jump right in. I think it's really important. So, the long range transportation plan is a policy document. We want to look at all modes of transportation. Currently within the department, we have a complete streets policy where we're looking at, for any types of improvements that we're making within our roadways, we look to try to see if we can accommodate for bicycles and or pedestrians at the same time. We've been working adamantly with our municipalities and our COGs to help develop, creative ways to try to incorporate all modes of transportation. As this document goes forward for the plan, it's more like policy settings. So, we do like bicycle and pedestrian, and that's something we definitely plan on incorporating within our plan and into the future. And as far as e-bikes go, I think some of the on-road facilities that we have, they can accommodate e-bikes. We have an active transportation plan unit, and within that unit, I can look into, trying to divvy up some more information on that. That was a great comment, though. Thank you very much for that.
Wonderful. And I know that the department is doing so much work with the active transportation plan. If you guys will just look out in just a moment, we will put a link to that plan in the
Yes.
chat for you all to learn more. All right. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next question. These are really great questions, so please keep them coming. The next question I see is related to East Haven. It says East Haven only has one way to get from south to north via the Webster Bridge. The bridge has crumbling paint, and we need to find better ways to connect in town. So again, I think this is speaking to that concept of connectivity between our communities. So Patrick, do you want to take a first stab at this answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is such a great comment. I do think, in terms for the long range transportation plan, looking at ways to improve our infrastructure is in our roadways is definitely a top priority, along with all modes of transportation. I do think, narrowing in, looking for better ways to have better connections within East Haven. I think a lot of times we will actively work with, the municipalities and the COGs. A lot of times we have those questions that come up generally, and we try to actively work with our municipalities and our COGs to try to drum up some ideas on how, we can make improvements within those municipalities to make those better connections. But I do think bringing it back to the long range transportation plan, it's important to note that, we're always looking for better ways to improve connectivity within our municipalities and other, key locations within our state.
Absolutely. What a great observation. We would love, as we often ask for people for feedback and what would be really helpful related to this. It would be so helpful as you're providing us comments on this plan. Tell us more about where and how you want to make that trip. Like, what's the best way for you to get to and from town, and like what mode and where are you coming from? Like that type of detail would be very helpful for us. Um, We'd love to see that comment come through. All right. Let's see. You guys are doing a great job coming up with some more questions. All right. I see another one here, more of a comment, so I'll share that with the team, is concerned about congestion. And I think that's something that we hear quite a lot about when we're talking about transportation in general, but this says that I-91 South has daily bottleneck traffic before 9 a.m. that needs solutions. Absolutely.
Yeah, just to pipe in a little bit, with our long range plan, we definitely want to reduce congestion. Have safer speeds on our highways and our interstates, and I do think that is a priority that we're looking to long term to invest in. That is a great comment, and we do see that there are bottlenecks throughout key areas within the state as a whole too.
Our next comment is, very related. Earlier when Caroline was talking, she discussed the overall transportation system and the number of trips that those of us in Connecticut are taking via train all the time. And so we've gotten a comment, and we'll document in our records as well, which is that East Haven needs a train station. So thank you for providing that. We'll make sure to write that in the comment tracker as well. All right. Let's see what else we have here. All right. Here's what's a good question to ask. It says that not all trends are related to sustainable or economically beneficial goals. How will the 2055 plan vet these differences and balance out those opposing desires or concerns?
That is a great question. A lot of times, with our vision, right, that we had stated, it really depends. Like, a lot of our goals are very generalized, high level policy type stuff. So, funding is not guaranteed. We understand that. That's always a challenge from today and going out into the future. But we do try to assist our goals and what's in the best interest for our citizens on a statewide, right? So safety, what types of technological, we do know we always try to be fiscally constrained when we're trying to either develop certain types of projects or try to incorporate certain types of technology. We do also have like environmental considerations that is always a big factor when it's looking to make investments within Connecticut's modes of transportation.
Absolutely. And I think this comment hits on some of the really hard, challenging decisions that leaders at the department have to make, right? We're always having to balance competing concerns. But another thing for us to think about is this is a statewide trend. And so something we'll also be doing is looking at the trends as needs may be different in the different communities across our state. So not every community has that same need. And so that's another way that we'll be able to look at that and try to balance it a little more globally. All right. Let's see what else. See. All right, here's us another great question. Particularly as we're thinking about emerging technologies here. The question is, are you considering battery electric trains as one of the emerging technologies that we're thinking about here? The comment is that it could be pivotal in bringing fast, sustainable, scalable train service here to lines that are not currently electrified. Patrick, can you speak a little bit to the electrification of the fleets and how this may play into those plans and policies?
That is a very good question. I do not have the answer on that, but we do have an office of rails that's kind of their forte. With this kind of question, I think it's really great that we'll take that into consideration. I'd like to reach out to them to see if I can get back to you at a later date with some better information.
Sure, absolutely. And maybe this is another opportunity for us to talk about scenario planning and how we plan to pull in these emerging technologies. Kim, do you want to chime in and mention how these emerging technologies will be explored?
Sure, Amy, I can definitely speak to that a little bit. As part of this long-range plan, we will be conducting scenario planning, which is something new for us here at CONDOT. And that's really going to be our team asking ourselves and the public what if, right? For things like severe weather events that we might be facing, changes in population, things that we don't necessarily have control over here at Connecticut DOT, and how could we be more elastic in respond to those changes that we might see in the future. So we know that the future always brings change, and some of it is somewhat unexpected. The COVID pandemic is a perfect example of that, and how it really changed travel patterns that we're seeing in the state. So that will be part of this plan, and we'll really be looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate you popping in and providing a little bit more insight into that scenario planning. I think that is probably one of the most unique components of this type of plan, and the opportunity that you get to look at things in a different way than maybe in some other plans. Okay, I think I saw another question come in. If you guys will give me a second to scroll through. All right, this is a little bit more of a comment, but we did ask and we said, hey, let's talk about multimodal transportation and see where you may see some gaps in our current system. This comment is from someone who would like e-aircraft to bypass the I-95 to travel to New York City and Boston without highway or train. So I think that's certainly trying to prepare for the future. All right, let me see. There are so many questions. Hold on. All right, coming back to New Haven. This question is related to New Haven Ports Authority is planning to grow. Where is the freight going to go? And concern about maybe potentially lack of space on I-95 or trains. Kim, is that something you'd like to, while we've got you here, or?
Most certainly. Can you just repeat that specific?
Yeah. This one is related to the New Haven Ports Authority planning to grow. And the question is, where is the freight going to go? What's the plan for that?
That is a great question, and that is actually something that we recently met with some of our freight stakeholders to discuss. We certainly have some port infrastructure in the state, but as we know, that is somewhat limited and to the port, to the state here. And again, we mentioned during the presentation some of our airports, but obviously TUI does have some plans to grow. So looking at where that freight can go, most of our freight does travel on our roadways, and we are actively looking into other avenues for that. So that is a great question, and those are the exact type of issues that we will be exploring in this long-range plan, is trying to find other alternatives to that freight movement.
Wonderful. So here's another one. Often a trend is created by a system gap, or maybe there's a failure in this system, like perhaps there is limited bus service, which could lead to highway or roadway congestion. Let's see, will Connecticut DOT consider congestion pricing to support transit improvement? Kim?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And right now, due to legislation that is law, we cannot study tolling or pricing congestion. So that is, again, one of those scenarios that we can think about if we did have other alternative forms for funding. And that may be something that we explore, but however, right now we are limited by that by the state legislature. However, I can say that we certainly do recognize that adding lanes is not always the answer. We are very well aware of the effects of induced demand, and we are taking a look at all of our projects with a multimodal lens to see where we can provide, again, those alternative modes of transportation to get all of our residents where they'd like to go and to have a nice, safe choice to do so.
Well, speaking of alternative modes of transportation, I think we have another question related to Governor Lamont's 30-30-30 plan, which they detail as 30-minute travel times by train between Hartford and New Haven, New Haven to Stamford, and Stamford to New York City. So the question is this still being considered? Is that something that might be in the cards by 2055?
Yeah, that is something that is still being discussed. As you can imagine, I think it goes without saying that that infrastructure, that rail infrastructure, is some of our oldest infrastructure that we have in the state, and it does need quite a bit of repair. When we look at our movable bridges along that stretch of rail line, there are many that are in need of rehabilitation and eventually replacement. So those are projects that are being initiated in the planning phase and being looked at at the department right now.
Thanks, Kim. All right, let me just scroll through and see if we have any other comments or questions. In the meantime, Michelle, would you mind throwing back up that slide that shows all of the ways that we're accepting comments? Just to make sure that I know personally for myself when I'm sitting in something and later go, oh goodness, why didn't I think to ask this question? Why didn't I say that? So I just wanted us to have a quick moment to pop this back on the screen really quickly. There are some wonderful comments and thoughts that are coming in, and I want to allow this to be on the screen. So if you're thinking of something later, make sure you have it. Here's our website. Certainly have an opportunity to send an email there as well. All right. Okay. There is certainly a lot of interest in our trains here tonight. And so, and I know safety is certainly one of our #1 priorities and is a huge goal of this plan and everything that Connecticut DOT does. This question is, or I guess more of a comment regarding safety concerns at transportation centers and the desire for more safety features using platforms. So particularly comment related to making sure that we're cautious of the large gaps that could potentially be between train and platform. And West Haven is one example of that. So thank you for providing that feedback as well. All right. Just making sure I haven't missed anybody. Here is another comment, more rather. The comment is more in regards to what they're calling transportation deserts and recognizing that there are a number of transportation deserts within the state, and Fairhaven may be one example. And the concern is where there are residents with lower income have difficulty to get to their daily tasks, like going to medical visits. Certainly a desire here to connect pedestrians to major transportation hubs. And I think that really goes back to that overarching goal that we had related to connectivity and also that equity access to all. So really, again, another wonderful comment. Apologize, I'm scrolling through just to make sure that we haven't left anybody out here. Let's see. Keep those questions coming. Keep those questions coming. All right, here's another question related to parking garages. Connecticut DOT investment in parking garages can be, and in many situations, um, also a problematic spur to induce demand. Kim, I know you mentioned concerns of induced demand earlier. Will the department develop standards for evaluating this question? Kim, would you jump back in here?
Sure, happy to. I think developing standards is maybe a phrase that I wouldn't use, but it is something that we do consider really carefully. The department is currently pursuing and looking at opportunities for TOD, transit-oriented development within some key areas. So there are some key areas near our transit hubs that parking garages are useful. However, I will say that there are some places that I can completely agree with the intent behind that statement. And a lot of those choices that are made within our cities and towns are indeed under local zoning, and Connecticut DOT does not have control over those decisions. But those are things that we are having discussions with many of our cities and towns as far as what is the best solution for that area. But again, some of those things are outside of our control when it comes to local land use.
Thank you. All right, we are live with some questions tonight. So the next one, Patrick, is related to bureaucratic overhead. So this person frequently hears from city officials in their area and other advocates in other cities that local initiatives that support walking and biking get slowed down and ultimately can be killed by red tape at Connecticut DOT. Will the 2055 plan address this bureaucratic overhead or perceived challenge?
So the plan, I mean, we could definitely take that comment into consideration. I do think, over the past several years, the department's had a huge culture change, and we're really looking at our processes to try to streamline them as much as possible. We do hear that it can be, relatively slow, but they're, especially looking at the types of funding. So transportation investment's like extremely expensive. And a lot of times there's a lot of checks and balances, and we have to work with not just, with the municipalities, but also with our federal government as well. So I know from the outside, it seems like, it could take a lengthy process, or there may be some stalls that happen. I could assure you that we are working diligently to try to streamline that process as much as possible.
All right, and then also provided some great comment for us. I know, as we've mentioned, safety is a #1 priority here. There are certainly some very specific comments about some accidents. So East Haven has many accidents at Forbes Place and Kimberly, and they need help and have concerns with that. Thank you so much for that comment. Another comment related to environmental concerns. This question, I think maybe, Kim, this might be a good one for you. Can you discuss the pollution reports the department puts out and speak a little bit about that and how the various modes are included in that?
Yeah, I can certainly try to shed some light on that question. The department, actually, we are responsible for producing a travel demand model. And so we use that. We look at our vehicle miles traveled. We have an awful lot of data that we collect on the vehicle miles traveled on our roadways. We report that over to Connecticut DEP, and they actually are the ones that set the pollution budgets. So we do not have input into all of those, but I would suggest that visiting DEP's website on air quality conformity may shed a lot of light on that. And they do have some really good reports that are very insightful as far as how they calculate pollution across all the different sectors, from industrial to transportation and residential within our state. And that may be very helpful to take.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim, for giving us a little insight into that process and the role. I think may be our final comment and question for this evening. Looking over here to my team to flag me if I have missed someone. It's certainly not my intention. All right. Just bear with me 1 second while I look. And while we're doing that, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just, there we go. Yep, all set. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. It looks like we have addressed all of the questions that have been provided. But again, as you know, you see on the screen the ways to engage with us further. If you think of something later, we'd love to hear from you, particularly, I know we discussed several opportunities here, perhaps gaps in transportation network, potential policy improvements. Those are wonderful and we'd love to hear more about them. So please go ahead and scan this QR code, visit our survey. If you feel like you'd just do better to respond to that, I mean, we've got the email address right here. Would love to hear all of that. Well, with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation this evening and close out our meeting. Thank you so much.